Scandinavian design is a design movement inspired by simplicity, minimalism, and functionality. But today, we're in South Africa, and it works. In today's episode of Finest Homes, we visit a house that speaks to its owner's love of minimalistic Scandinavian style, designed by architect Carlo Swart of Drawbox Design Studio. We also chat to Yolandi Kumans of Malachite Design, who assisted with the interior design. And lastly, we find out more about the landscaping from Marianette Hoffman of Plant Paradise, who softened the home with greenery. Carlo, this is a project where the client had a few designs to look through and pick and choose, but what was the ultimate brief for this final product?
For them specifically, they came to us because of designs we did that was honest to structure and honest to what it is. You know, the building is what it is, a brick is what it is, concrete is what it is, steel is what it is. And I think they appreciated the honesty of that. And from there, it was sort of easy to translate that onto what the site is, as it was kind of the right thing to do, you know, so that it speaks directly to the context it sits in.
Well, speaking of structure, we look around and we see metal, wood, glass, steel. That's quite a shopping list. How did you ensure that the combination of all these elements create this design?
Right, so there is quite a lot of elements, you're right, but I think everything that you've mentioned is appropriate. You know, the steel used was structurally, it's not used decoratively. The timber used has a function in the sense of, you know, providing good insulation from the north facade, and also structurally it reads as a light element that sits on top of the base of the building, which is then made of brick, which sort of grounds the building itself.
But with the interior, you get a really light and airy feel. And I suppose this is all in the name of layout.
So in terms of the layout, the client's request was to have something that's structurally bold and honest, but not cold, to be homely. Because of the client's specific family's arrangements and how they live, everything wanted to happen around the kitchen because they spend so much time cooking. So the TV lounge, the dining area, the stoop area, everything sort of happens radially around the kitchen. And these spaces are then again distinguished by different volumes. You'll note the area where we're in is a higher volume, which sort of accentuates your view out towards the green belt.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the green belt and the stoop, because when you look out, it sort of gives you an idea of the placement of the building.
Yes,
did you
yeah.
face any challenges?
Wow, yeah, we did. This site is fantastic. It was such a privilege to work in it. You'll see from the back to the front, it falls almost 6 meters. So the nice thing about that is it was a challenge to engage with this greenbelt area, but to still maintain sort of a flat platform where the kids can play. So, you know, you kind of have these two wonderful elements, and to merge them was really the key, so that you can have the best of both worlds.
So this home speaks to the Scandinavian style, but how does that translate into the architectural design?
The Scandinavian design is obviously a phenomenal sort of style, if you can call it that, but I think their approach to design is really something that's simple, honest to materials, and, you know, to try and take out as much kind of the decorative out of it, and focus on the minimal honesty of what it is that they actually do. So the house tries to achieve that, expressly by having the timber, the timber box sort of at the top, sitting on top of this base, separating the elements, and the timber also, relates a little bit back to the Scandinavian idea. They use a lot of wood in their design, and that was something that appealed to the client, which we integrated. Yes.
The selection of materials also assisted to bridge the gap between clean lines and a sense of homeliness, with the use of timber and dark colours in certain key areas, assisting to create a warmer interior. If you look at the exterior of the home, you get the impression that the first floor structure is one box placed on top of another, simply laid as a loose element on top of the ground floor. Wow, Karlu, it's hard not to notice the different levels and angles to the construction of the building.
Yes, so Tumelo, it was influenced by the site and the orientation of the site. So as mentioned before, the site falls from east to west quite significantly. And in an ideal world, you'd like your view to be north of the house, so the whole house can face north. So we've got the green belt on the western side, so to deal with that issue was really the informants for the way that the spaces were organized. At the lower ground floor, which is ideal because we managed to put the garage at the lower ground floor area, so it's not interrupting the living areas and the living spaces so much. And then it allowed to free up the ground floor area, and then to really connect the spruit or the little greenbelt area with the cultivated area that's like the lawn on this side. So the house on this level really becomes like a bridge almost that connects the natural landscape and then the cultivated landscape. So you can have best of both.
I like the clever little trick of hiding the garage where no one can really see it. What other features make this home unique?
Yeah, so I think the cantilever that we've got on the outside here and this box that's sort of twisted a little bit diagonally to face exactly north, and then also for the views of the bedroom at the top to look over onto the spruit area, and then also the massive cantilever by pushing the top box as far as possible as we can outside, past the stoop area, really creates as much shade as possible. You'll see that the horizon line of where the cantilever is being so far really shades the glass facing west.
Well, if I had the luxury of picking my favorite feature, it's certainly the staircase. It's so effective.
And I must say it's one of the most successful ones I've seen, especially with you'll see it's got thin, the rods are quite thin, it's like 10 millimeters thick. So the staircase, all the treads basically hang from these rods that's suspended from the bridge structure as you go up. And to get those rods to be straight like that was quite a task, but I think he did a phenomenal job. So no, it was an exciting way to design it. And then to come back to the Scandinavian idea is to use the wood, and you'll note how we carved little sections out of the wood so that the steel structure sort of blends, so it sort of goes into each other, and then it can be tightened at the bottom so that the rods can be made tight.
Karlu, to me, in estate living, privacy is quite important, and it seems like those screens do a pretty good job at that.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's what they were intended for. So the screens basically then give you privacy from the people on the other side of the spruit or the greenbelt area, because they obviously also want to live out onto the greenbelt, so you need that privacy. So the screens do that, and they also shade the sun. So the screens really can move south to north, north to south, depending on where you'd like to shade the building or where you'd like privacy for a certain time of year or day.
Stay with us. After the break, we meet the interior designer who assisted in bringing a sleek Scandi-inspired interior to life. In today's episode of Finest Homes, we're visiting a home that met its owner's needs for a minimalist Scandinavian-inspired abode. With clean lines and a mixture of tangible materials on the exterior, the interior is an oasis of contemporary serenity. Interior designer Yolandi Kumans of Malachite Design assisted the client in creating this vision. Yolandi, this is the sort of house you don't have to say make yourself at home at. It comes so naturally. It's cozy, it's comfortable, and it's somewhere you want to spend your time. Is this somewhere along the brief that the client gave you?
Absolutely. When the client contacted me, his brief was to create a home for him, his wife, and his two beautiful little girls. A home with a Scandinavian feel, while drawing inspiration from the concrete, steel, and glass elements used in the construction.
You mentioned Scandinavian style, and what we know about that is they use quite muted colors and palettes. How did you integrate those elements?
That's exactly right, Tumelo. We worked with a monochromatic scheme mostly, greys, tans, charcoals, and then adding pops of colors. We've got navy sofas, green scatters, just to bring a bit of life into the area.
And you see some of those in the exterior as well. So how did you ensure that you made a good marriage between your interior and your exterior?
That's exactly it. So they've got such a beautiful landscape outside. So we wanted to bring that inside, where we brought in interior plants, as well as some green cushions, as well as a few textures into the furnishings as well.
Now, when we talk about baked-in features, we mean if we're to turn the home upside down, it's what would remain. Can you talk about some of those features and how you use them as a canvas to then work in the interior design?
Absolutely. The kitchen is a great example. We've got white stone tops, greys and oaks, which make for a beautiful clean palette, and you can literally add any furnishing to those colors.
I love how open and airy the space is, but there's still a distinct understanding of each function of the spaces. How did you achieve this?
Well, we worked especially with clean, straight lines and simple furnishings, which are warm yet inviting as well. And we've grounded each area by using rugs and made it functional in that way.
It seems like the tabletops actually play quite an important function to anchor the spaces down. How easy was it to find these pieces that work so perfectly?
Well, a few of these pieces were actually custom made for the client. We've got the TV unit, which was made uniquely according to his requirements, and then the coffee tables were based off a design which the client actually saw and loved. So we had that commissioned for him, along with floating shelves and the dining table behind us.
I'd love to talk more about your involvement in the project. I mean, we've learnt on the show that there's a difference between interior design and interior decorating. How did you assist the client?
Design plays an integral role. Without good design, your decorating won't look great. But the client had a very clear image in mind of what they wanted to create in the space. So they were very hands-on in the interior process, and they wanted to source a lot of the items locally as well. So I guided them through the whole process, and we custom made a few of the items and sourced locally as they wanted.
I love that you've touched on local, because I mean, South Africa is one of the best places to live in, and we've got the best weather. How did you ensure that the layout of this space accommodated and celebrated that?
Well, the client especially enjoys entertaining on their outdoor patio area. So we've incorporated a great seating area and a dining area for them to enjoy. And we've brought in some warmth with a bit of color, again using the greens and repeating the use of concrete on the table outside as well.
What do you think is the trick in incorporating sort of a Scandi style into a South African aesthetic?
Well, it can be tricky sometimes, but the trick is to keep it simple, keep straight lines, and add a bit of texture and color. Also, depending on what the client enjoys and likes, their requirements placed first, of course. So we added texture with the scatters, and then also color on the furniture items, and we brought the outside in with the plants.
Now, I see how the theme has been applied into the living spaces, but how does this translate into the bedrooms?
For example, in the main bedroom, we made use of a textured black-on-black wallpaper behind the bed. This creates quite a bit of depth in the bedroom, while enabling the client to change their linen color, add some scatter cushions with the black palette behind. It just gives a bit of life as well.
That's really interesting that, you know, the Scandinavian style is light and airy, yet you have that powerful black in the background. How did you balance those two?
Again, we've got the combination of the oak bedding in the bedroom, so the bedside tables and the bed base and headboard are made from oak, so that balances against the black wallpaper, and using lighter linen, so we've got lighter greys and white, which always pops it up as well.
I noticed the wood is quite an important feature in this aesthetic. Are there different woods that you can use as an alternative to oak?
Absolutely. I'd say mostly stick to lighter woods. So one could look at a teak or a walnut, as long as it's got a lighter stain applied to it. Although oak is the most common known with the Scandi feel, and it's very hard wearing, and as I mentioned before, it literally matches with everything.
Quick and easy, but so impactful, sophisticated and beautiful.
Absolutely, Tumelo.
After the break, we find out more about the landscaping that went into this finest home and break down the elements that make a Scandi-inspired interior. In today's episode of Finest Homes, we're visiting a home in the Highveld where wood, steel, concrete and glass make for a clean-lined contemporary home. With the owners playing an integral part in creating the Scandinavian-inspired home, we chatted to the visionaries who brought the look to life. The landscaper responsible for the most recent update to the garden is Marianette Hoffman of Plant Paradise. Marianette, it sounds like there were a few geographic considerations in the construction of this home. What was your involvement?
I was basically involved with doing the landscaping for the clients and softening up the exterior of the garden for them.
And what exactly does it mean to sort of design the landscape? Can you break that down for us?
The first step to any design and any garden basically is going to the customer or the client, doing a proper consultation, which means you get all the info from what they want, what type of personality they are, how long they spend in the garden, are they keen gardeners or not, what we've got to work with climate-wise, temperature, that's a very, very big influence on the garden obviously as well. So after you've done the consultation, you go back to the drawing board and then you get all that planned out, and obviously according to the client's needs, then you do the design.
Well, there's one thing with what the clients want, but Mother Nature also has her demands. Did you have some limitations to what it is you could do in this garden?
First thing, what the limitations is in this specific garden is climate. It gets quite cold in this area, so frost is a big influence. That I definitely had to keep in mind. Obviously also it looks like a bigger garden, but you do have limitations on what type of plants to use and how far from the barriers or the walls you must go. And obviously also the size of the garden and how many kids they've got. So the play area and the size of the lawn was also very important to them, to have a big enough area for the kids to play ball and still enjoy themselves.
Talk to me about what influenced your selection of plants that you've used in this garden.
First of all, it was personal preference from the client, but there was also a list of indigenous plants that we had to use in this specific area. So that's basically what you need to look at, and obviously they've asked for a very low maintenance. Being as busy as they are, we needed to go very low maintenance and make sure that they don't have too much, spending time in the weekends on their off days doing gardening, so we had to look at that as well.
You can hear by the sounds of things that the client was really at the heart of your work.
Absolutely.
And I love how you brought the planters home, quite literally.
Yes.
Talk to me about the integration of planters in the home.
What they really wanted was bringing softness and greenery into the home as well. They've got a lot of glass and windows in the front section, so that at least was actually brilliant for the plants that we had to use. So using the planters on the outside, on the patio area, brings a little bit of the garden into the home and softening it up. So we've used spekboom, as everybody knows it, which is a brilliant plant to use to get some of that terrible carbon dioxide out of the air for them and just bring some greenery and softness to them.
Now, naturally with estate living, there are some parameters within which you have to work. Can you name some of them and how you dealt with them?
First thing in estate especially is privacy, is always a big problem to most of my clients. So it is very important to make sure that you've got screening plants on the perimeter, and the one thing, because it's indigenous here, the one thing that you must really focus on is to try and stay indigenous as far as you possibly can, which Buddleia is a very, very good option for privacy against a wall. You must always be careful not to plant the wrong things against a wall or close to a wall, because then you can always sit with problems in the future.
I love that, using planters for your privacy. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now to help us recreate a Scandi-inspired interior, Yolandi of Malachite Designs breaks down the elements for us. Yolandi, we're talking Scandinavian style. In your eyes, what exactly does that mean?
Scandinavian has a base of steel, concrete, glass, oak, timber, a little bit of marble, all straight lines, clean features, almost clinical, but a little bit of warmth as well. Your base needs to be monochromatic. So we're looking at dark grays, even a bit of black, charcoal, and bringing in the lighter colors as well as pops then. So we can do larger pieces, your sofas in the dark grays. We've got different textures. Textures are also important. It brings in a bit of warmth. So you can play with leather, fabrics, and then adding your pops of color. We've got greens, mustards, and even the botanicals, which are still very trendy now.
Interesting that you mentioned that monochromatic does not necessarily only have to be black and white, because that's where the mind goes. So you can sort of play with your darker and lighter colors and still achieve the monochromatic look. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Your charcoals, even a little bit of a tan, a taupe color, that plays all a part in being monochromatic.
Right. So we've spoken about a monochromatic base. How do we then build up from there?
So we'll start with our bases. Usually our larger items, your sofas, your bigger chairs, will be darker greys, charcoals, maybe even a taupe. And then we'll add texture with textured patterns as well as color pops. So we can go with velvets, greens, your navies, and then even the botanical florals for scatters and just added decor items.
I want to dive a little bit deeper into the textures, because in Scandinavia they have really long winters and they have to account for that. But in South Africa we have pretty sunny weather. So how do we translate this into a true South African scheme?
So as you mentioned, as our summers and even our winters are a lot warmer than what they are in Europe, I like to incorporate a bit of leather. So then it's not that very warm, woolly, chunky feeling. You've got leather with a textured fabric, which again is a little bit cooler than the heavy wools. And then bringing in your velvets again, which is another texture. So you're going from soft to a little bit more coarse and a smooth leather finish.
So how do you plan and structure your different elements to ensure they complement each other?
So I like to use a clean palette base. So that's looking at your concretes, your stone tops, your oak tops, and then adding layers on top of that. Then we'll add with fabrics, textures, patterns, and so you build up.
That's it for this week's episode of Finest Homes.